Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. This is the third session of Trinity Term of the Jurisprudence Discussion Group in Oxford, and we have with us today Professor Peter Czerne, who holds a PhD from the University of Hamburg, and he's currently a reader in law in the University of Aberdeen since 2020. And he's going to present the paper Meta-Theoretical Strategies in Private Law Theory. Peter, thank you very much for coming to Oxford today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Javier. It's a great honor to be here. I haven't been in Oxford for more than a decade now, so it's great to be back. And of course, when I got the invitation, I started thinking, what could I present which is not completely irrelevant to this group? And I found this paper, which I have been working on intermittently for many years, maybe 5 years, which may have some interest for legal philosophers in Oxford. So I am not going through the paper linearly, word by word, but you can, of course, afterwards come to test me on any of the statements I make in the paper, which are not actually, none of the statements are I think, very categorical. So I will say a little bit about two families of private law theory, and then a kind of typology of meta-theoretical strategies. I will explain what I mean by that. And on the way, I will make some remarks on how one of these families, which is broadly speaking, I will call economic, could be defended against some of the objections which it is sometimes confronted with. So the starting point is, of course, what is private law as a doctrinal area, and that's even controversial whether we can have special jurisprudence about private law, because at least in this jurisdictions we don't have textbooks on private law. We have textbooks on contracts and torts and property, but at least some legal scholars who are not so far from doctrine also write about private law. So this is probably enough of an anchor to speak about private law as a doctrinal area, if we want to think about private law theory as something which is a theory of an area which is defined conventionally by practitioners and doctrinal legal scholars. So in that respect, private law theory is an instance of special jurisprudence, and it tries to theorize what private law is, or what private law is for, or how private law can be justified. And when I talk about meta-theoretical strategies, I refer to very broadly all modes of confronting or combining or thinking about a relationship of theories which are about the same phenomenon, private law, but they are apparently not compatible, or at least at first sight not compatible. So I said I would talk about these two families, or kind of the two main protagonists in this paper, and broadly speaking, functionalist or economic or consequentialist theories, and deontic or expressivist or moral theories of private law. Of course, these are very, very broad categories, and so you will see the way we interpret these, the confrontations will look different. And of course, this paper is not meant to be a historical or sociological paper about how these two families have related to each other or relate to each other now, but I have to give a bit of context which makes it at least credible that this kind of polarization is there. So if you think about George Fletcher, 1972, Harvard Law Review, Fairness and Utility in Tort Theory, and then 50 years later, Calabresi and Spencer Smith, again the Harvard Law Review on tort law's dualisms. So I say a bit more about that in the paper, but basically I kind of claim that there is, or assume there's a kind of self-reinforcing perception in private law theory of this polarization, that there are two opposing groups, two seemingly incompatible bodies of scholarship, which has come about probably as a challenge and response dynamic. So the initial appeal and success of economic analysis was confronted by counterattacks, which claimed that this economic account of private law, which meant to provide kind of order, rational order in a chaotic set of rules and principles and doctrines, is actually not capable of accounting for key features of private law, that it is backward looking and it has a certain conceptual structure, and it is bilateral and transparently deontic. And instead of that, economic theory is kind of an external theory and parasitic on this kind of probably doctrinally anchored account. And but this, what exactly this polarization means is not very clear. In the paper there's this table. The table is of course not systematic. These are just random examples, and in various publications, various theorists who want to, in most cases, want to argue for one side of these oppositions. They say, I am providing an instrumental theory against an expressivist, or vice versa. I am providing a formalist account rather than a functionalist account, or others are, so some of these contrasts are about the structure, or if you like, two forms of rationality, like what Chapman does. Others are expressed in ethical terms. Others are expressed in terms of substantive values like welfare, autonomy, etc. And the interesting thing, of course, is that the dividing lines are then different depending on how you draw these oppositions. So not everybody who is claiming that private law theory is instrumental is also is in agreement with others who are putting forward an economic theory, for instance. So, and I can say a bit more about this dynamic later if you want, or it has, of course, its sociological side in terms of professional rivalry and prestige and so on. But what is important here is that some scholars, and this includes me, think that, okay, we probably want to think, how are these really incompatible with each other, and when are these compatible with each other, these polarized two accounts. So there's a need for a kind of meta theory, and I follow here Jody Krauss, who talked about it already 20 years ago, saying that he was talking about contract law in particular, or the theories of contract law in particular, and he was contrasting two types of theories here. His main argument was that there are autonomy-based and economic theories of contract, but once we see what they are saying, their conflict has to be solved at the level of legal methodology, because they differ on at least 4 different fronts in what contract law is: expressive doctrinal statements in the autonomy theory versus outcomes of cases in the economic account, what contract theories should do, explain or justify contract law versus explain away the distinctness of contract law because it's just one technique among the others. They also differ on how they understand adjudication, and they also differ on probably a number of other things. But what he's saying is that we need a kind of integration strategy, and we can have an integration strategy where we bring these together. I mean, he suggests a number of these, so I will take the clue or some clues from him, but I extend it beyond contract law to private law, and I consider a broader set of theories and strategies. So I do this in kind of 4 steps, and in the 4th step there are 4 strategies that I distinguish. So the 4 steps are the first 2 steps are answering this elementary question whether these theories are comparable at all, because are they theories of the same phenomenon? So do they have the same explanandum, or are they seeking to achieve the same task? So what is private law theory a theory of, and what do private law theories want to achieve? And only if both or all the theories that we want to combine or integrate or reconcile are conceptualizing their object the same way, and they set the same task for themselves, then we can say, okay, one is probably better than the other. But of course, that's the 3rd step. What are the criteria of theoretical success? In what sense can one theory be better than the other? And if we kind of have a stalemate, not a clear winner between the two, then we need to go to the 4th step, which is actually the integration, if you like, or a meta-theoretical strategy in the narrower sense. And I distinguish 4, although only 3 are real in that respect. We kind of balance the 2 different guiding considerations of the 2, or we say one is actually the correct one, but we accept that in the focus or on the main paradigmatic aspects, but we accept some corrections, or we try to combine 2 in a way that one is kind of hierarchically over the other and explains or justifies the other. And we can say, and that's the 4th strategy, that actually neither or nor the one or the other is right, because the whole idea of theorizing private law should be done in a different way. So when we start with the question, what is private law theory a theory of, we have a long list of candidates of various explananda or interpretanda, depending on what we are doing. And obviously, if the main explanandum of economic theories is case outcomes, as I said, in so-called policy analysis, or judicial behavior when defined in so-called political economy analysis. Then they are not engaging with the reasons that the judges are giving, and that's probably the main staple of the other type of theory. But of course, if you say that economic theories are also working in this doctrinal mode or interpretative mode, then there is a genuine potential conflict or a genuine possibility of integration. So here we can kind of stop the debate in the first and second step if we realize there is no genuine conflict, because one is kind of a sociological account, broadly speaking, the other is a conceptual account or a moral account, and this is very easy. But if, and this is the ambition of a lot of economic theories, that they are also kind of rationalizing what the courts are doing in the terms that the courts are talking about, or if not, they are not less transparent, or that's not a problem, and they then we have to go further. But there, I am now already talking about the second question, so not just the object, but what should a theory achieve. In the paper, I rely or kind of take on board the categorization that Kuyten and Steele, two professors here, use. And I mean, their paper as a history, and I was referring to the older version, but the newer version is kind of a much more complex. I don't know if that paper was discussed here in this group before. Okay, so you are well familiar with that. I mean, the difficulty is, of course, that whether we can indeed neatly put all interpretive theories into one box or another, or that's I think a key issue for them. But if otherwise, if one theory is a positive, other is a normative, one theory wants to justify, the other wants to explain, then we don't have these kind of problems. If they both want to interpret in the same sense, then we have to go to the third stage where we want to ask, okay, what do we do? Otherwise, we just have a kind of horizontal integration, you could call, or division of labor. So if there is no conflict, because the epistemic goals are different, then we can just stop there. But of course, it is even contested how this division of labor would look like, because some say that corrective justice provides a better explanation for tort law, while economics provide a better justification. This is what Steve Hadley says, and Jody Krause says the opposite. So economic explanations, economic theory provides better explanation, while moral theories provide a better justification for tort law. So it's not very stable. I mean, it's just it's contested how exactly this division of labor would look like. But as I said, if they are they want to theorize the same object in the same way, then we have to compare them. And the possible criteria for adjudicating which one is more successful is fit, transparency. These two are also discussed by Steele and Kuyten, and determinacy. So fit would mean to the extent, I mean, the extent to which the theory accounts for the observed phenomena being doctrine, rules, case outcomes, whatever. And here mainly, substantive content of private law as well as the structure of private law, how private law operates. And in this respect, there is this bone of contestation whether the bilateral nature of private law is something that economic theorists cannot account for. Therefore, they are definitely inferior to the other type. And this is what I want to look at a little bit more. So I would say that, of course, this is like the structure of how private law operates, probably by, probably this is what it's conceptually linked to what we mean by private law. But private law solves problems that could be solved in other ways. For historic reasons, it is solved through adjudication and compensation from the victim of a civil wrong to the victim of a civil wrong from the wrongdoer. The same problem could be solved by kind of centralized governmental regulation, but this technique for regulating the relevant issues was not available when private law emerged. So we can observe structural features of private law as actually they are features of adjudication, and when these features emerged as technology of dispute resolution and social ordering, there was no institutionalized practice of aggregative reasoning or kind of regulating society in a way. I'm talking about 2,000 or 300,000 years ago. This is kind of, we can give kind of account of how bilateralism emerged without necessarily justifying it. And we can similarly give a kind of account, a functionalist or instrumental account of the persistence of bilateralism, saying, well, in a way, the victims of civil wrongs, contract breaches, or tortious wrong are bringing the cases in front of this kind of a decentralized enforcement regime, which, of course, is this incentive structure is very clear if you look at cases where compensation is not just equal to the harm, but the double or the triple of the harm. This really shows that this is kind of an instrument to incentivize a case to be brought forward. So deontic accounts may explain these kind of features away as anomalies, while economic accounts take them as evidence for the instrumental way that private law operates. So if bilateralism is a problem of fit, then economic theorists have some kind of an answer to that. Transparency is the issue, whether the express legal reasoning by judges and other officials is supported by the concept of, or is kind of continuous with the theory, or the theory explains why the judges probably mistakenly use these concepts, which they shouldn't. And here again, it looks like that economic theories are inferior, but you can find there is at least one attempt by Krauss to provide an account how historically it came about that this kind of the language is moral, but what these technical terms actually mean, or how judges now use them, could be fully accounted for in an economic theory. I don't say much about determinacy now, but here, there again, the argument is that actually economic theories are more determinate than the deontic theories. So in that respect, I mean, and there are responses to this. So it's, if it is unresolved, then we have to go to the fourth step. Okay, how do we have these imperfectly successful theories? How do we combine them? And I say first, what you can do is a kind of balancing, and I provide two examples in the paper. One is kind of micro level, saying, okay, for certain types of cases, the best account is a intrinsic or deontic account, a corrective justice account. For other cases, it's an economic account, and as the situation warrants, one theory is better than the other. And there are other kinds of balancing exercises where, and I think variants of that are kind of convergence theories or overlapping consensus arguments. Then you can also increase the fit between theory and legal material by, this is the second strategy, by saying, okay, this theory is right, but we have to correct it on the margins. And I give an example here, or another example, an example here where corrective justice theory takes on board some arguments from Calabrese's account of liability rules. The third is if you like, a real integration, where you could say, if we are talking about justificatory theories, detached or committed normative theories, we can say that economic theories kind of hierarchically above the moral accounts, and this is kind of a rule consequentialist account. So the nominally deontic doctrine is ultimately justified instrumentally. But you can do it the other way around as well, saying that there are moral justice-based reasons for accepting in a limited domain that the guiding principle is efficiency. And in that way, you kind of hierarchically prioritize one over the other, but it's not clear whether, you can conceive of both as possible integration strategies. And then at the end, you can say, well, both of these families are guilty of the sin of being foundationalist. They think that these doctrinal areas have a real foundation, rather than they are just contingent historical categories which don't have any further. We don't have to think about justifying them or accounting for them theoretically, because either because this is a futile exercise, or they would, whatever private law is for should be decided politically in a deliberative process, for instance. And if you don't do that, you are not just foundationalist, but anti-democratic. This, of course, is a challenge, if you like, to the whole enterprise of special jurisprudence, I would say, or I would imagine. And if you like, some of the economic accounts actually buy into that, saying, well, ultimately, if there are political philosophy reasons to say that, okay, some efficiency arguments are working for the law, they are not just specifically relevant for private law. So that theory is not just a theory of private law, but a broader theory of public policy, and therefore, if you like, you can also interpret economic theories in this fourth mode. Finally, I have 1 more minute. I think what we can observe is, if you like, this is a static account. You can also observe some kind of dynamic here, which I think can be seen in the examples about fit and transparency. That there it looks like there is a dynamic which favors consequentialist account or instrumental account or incentive-based explanations of doctrines. So in principle, you can always give an incentive-based explanation of whatever is there in the doctrine in terms of an explanatory account. And when we talk about, so this is one dynamic, and then you can try to resist, but it's hard work. At each step, you can resist explaining. Okay, this there are some other explanations here which are non-instrumental. The other dynamic is that, and this is much broader, that all the kind of non-consequentialist justifications of private law could be consequentialized or reinterpreted as in terms of a consequentialist theory. This is what happens broadly in moral theory. And then of course there's a price for that, because you lose something of the pluralism, moral or normative pluralism, if you think everything is just a matter of consequences. So in both cases, it is an uphill battle, and there is, apart from this meta-theoretical dynamic, there is of course a real-world dynamic, and this is, I think, behind this whole talk that I gave, that we noticed that private law, on the face of it, looks like transactional, but it is facing challenges like what we are going to listen to about, like AI. People are trying to use these technologies, regulatory technologies, which are thousands of years old, but they repurpose them. They use them for a different function, or they just use them as one possible technique rather than another. So this is kind of the broader question here: how private law is private law an empty vessel, or an old-timer, or both? And in that cases, what do we do when there are these kind of radical functional changes to a human artifact, which private law and its theory are? Okay, as I said, I'm really curious what you think, because this is very much an unfinished paper, and I hope I can learn from you in the discussion. Thanks very much.